The dust storm had passed, but Vela's throat still burned with every breath. She held Mira's hand tighter as they approached the settlement gates, while 8-year-old Kale pressed against her other side, his small frame trembling. The human colony rose before them like a fortress of gleaming metal and reinforced concrete, its walls scarred from bombardments that had ended 3 months ago when the war finally stopped. Vela had walked for 6 days to reach this place, the last coordinates she'd found in a destroyed aid station. Her people, the Thrixians, had lost the war. That made her children targets everywhere they went. The guards at the gate wore the blue and white of Earth's colonial administration. Both raised their rifles when Vela stumbled into the light. She raised her free hand, the other still gripping Mira's fingers. "Please," she said in broken human standard. "Work. Food. I work." The older guard, a woman with grays streaking her temples, shook her head. "No aliens. Governor's orders. Move along. Children hungry." Vela's voice cracked. Kale whimpered against her leg. "I work hard. Clean. Build. Anything." "You heard her," the younger guard said. His finger moved closer to the trigger. "Your kind killed enough of ours. Get lost." Vela's legs nearly buckled. She'd heard the same words at 4 other settlements. Soon there would be nowhere left to go, and her sister's children would die in the wasteland because Vela couldn't protect them. She turned away, pulling the children with her, when a voice cut through the wind. "Wait." A human woman stepped through the gate, flanked by 2 more guards. She wore practical work clothes under a long coat, her dark hair pulled back in a braid. Her eyes were sharp, examining Vela with an intensity that made the alien mother want to hide. But there was something else there too, something Vela recognized from the mirror on the few occasions she could bear to look at her own reflection. Exhaustion, loss, the weight of too many dead. "I'm Catherine Grant," the woman said. "You're Thrixian." It wasn't a question. Vela nodded, her heart hammering against her ribs. Catherine looked down at Mira and Kale, both staring up at her with huge, frightened eyes. Mira's stomach growled audibly in the silence. "When did they last eat?" 2 days, Vela whispered. "I gave them my share yesterday." Catherine's jaw tightened. She turned to the gray-haired guard. "Open the gate." "Ma'am, the council voted." "I know what the council voted," Catherine interrupted, "and I'm overriding it. Open the gate, Lieutenant Davis, or I'll do it myself." The guard hesitated, then stepped aside. The gate slid open with a hydraulic hiss. Catherine gestured for Vela to follow. "Come with me. We'll get them fed first, then we'll talk about work." Vela couldn't move. Her legs had locked in place, her mind refusing to believe what was happening. Catherine waited, patient, until Vela finally took one shaking step forward, then another. Kale and Mira moved with her, pressed against her sides like they might disappear if they let go. Inside the settlement, people stopped to stare as Catherine led them through the main avenue. Vela heard the whispers, saw the hatred in some eyes, the disgust in others. A man spat on the ground as they passed. But Catherine walked with her head high, ignoring them all, until they reached a cafeteria building near the center of the colony. "Get them whatever they want," Catherine told the cook, a heavy-set man with kind eyes, "and bring it to my office." In Catherine's office, Vela watched her children devour protein bars and fruit while Catherine sat across from them, waiting. When Mira finally slowed down, clutching a half-eaten apple like it might vanish, Catherine leaned forward. "What's your name?" "Vela." She swallowed hard. "These are Mira and she died when the orbital defense platforms fell on our world. I'm sorry." Catherine's voice held genuine sympathy. "What kind of work did you do before the war?" Vela hesitated. The truth could get them killed in some places. Humans saw Thrixian scientists as the architects of weapons that had slaughtered millions, but lying felt wrong after this woman had shown them mercy. "Environmental systems, water purification, atmosphere regulation." Catherine's eyebrows rose. "You're a scientist." "Was. Now I just need to keep them alive." "The agricultural domes need workers," Catherine said slowly. "Basic maintenance, crop harvesting, soil management. It's hard work, and the pay is minimal. But it comes with housing and food rations for all 3 of you." Vela's throat closed. She tried to speak, couldn't, and just nodded desperately. "There's one condition," Catherine continued. "Some people here lost family in the war. They'll give you trouble. You'll face prejudice, maybe worse. If you stay, you follow our laws and you don't retaliate no matter what they say or do. Can you manage that?" "Yes." The word came out as a sob. "Yes." "Thank you." Catherine stood and extended her hand. Vela stared at it, then carefully took it, feeling the strength in the human woman's grip. "Welcome to New Haven Colony," Catherine said. "Let's see if we can't give your children a future worth having." The first week tested every promise Vela had made. The agricultural domes were massive structures that stretched across 2 kilometers, filled with rows of crops that fed the colony's 3,000 inhabitants. Vela's supervisor, a gruff man named Hernandez, worked her 12-hour shifts checking soil composition, adjusting nutrient feeds, and harvesting vegetables until her muscles screamed. She didn't complain. Mira and Kale had beds now, real beds in a small apartment near the dome. They attended the colony school, though Mira came home crying twice because other children called her monster and refused to sit near her. "Ignore them," Vela told her niece, braiding her pale hair before bed. "We're guests here. We're alive. That's what matters." But Kale's nightmares grew worse, and Vela heard him screaming for his mother in the darkness, calling out in Thrixian for someone who would never answer. She held him until dawn, singing the lullabies her sister used to sing, wondering if she was strong enough to keep doing this. On the 8th day, Catherine appeared at the agricultural dome during Vela's shift. She walked through the rows of tomato plants until she found Vela checking moisture levels. "How are you settling in?" "Good." Vela kept working, afraid to stop and seem lazy. "The children like school." "Liar." Catherine's voice held no anger, just observation. "Mira's teacher told me what's happening. The other kids are cruel." Vela's hands stilled. "They lost family. They have reason. Reason doesn't make it right." Catherine crouched beside her. "I wanted you to know. I've assigned a counselor to work with both children. Someone who specializes in trauma. And I've instructed the teachers that any bullying will result in immediate detention." Vela looked at her. "This human woman who owed them nothing. Why do you help us?" Catherine was quiet for a long moment. "Because I lost my son in the war, 18 years old, killed in the Battle of Proxima Station by Thrixian plasma fire, and every day I have to choose whether his death makes me into someone who spreads more hate, or someone who tries to build something better." She stood, brushing dirt from her knees. "I'm choosing better. That means giving your children the chance mine never got." Before Vela could respond, an alarm shrieked through the dome. Red lights flashed along the irrigation channels. Hernandez came running, his face pale. "The water system just crashed. Complete shutdown. We've got maybe 6 hours before the crops start dying." Catherine's expression hardened. "Get the engineering team. They're already working on it," Hernandez said. "But they can't figure out what's wrong. The system's using modified Thrixian tech we salvaged after the war. Our people don't fully understand it." Vela stood slowly. Her heart began to race. "I can look." Both humans stared at her. Catherine spoke first. "You know the system? If it's based on Thrixian environmental design, yes. I helped develop the purification protocols used on 17 colony worlds." Catherine didn't hesitate. "Show me." They ran to the water treatment facility, a building attached to the dome's eastern wall. Inside, 6 human engineers clustered around a massive control panel, arguing and pulling up diagnostic screens that flashed error codes faster than they could read them. The head engineer, a woman named Patricia Chen, looked up when Catherine entered. "We're dead in the water," Chen said bluntly. "Whatever's wrong, it's buried so deep in the code we'd need weeks to find it." Catherine stepped aside, revealing Vela. She might be able to help. Chen's face twisted with disgust. "You brought a Thrixian in here? To our water supply?" "She's an expert in these systems," Catherine said firmly. "Let her try." "Absolutely not. I'm not letting that thing near Chen." Catherine's voice dropped to ice. "People are watching to see if I made a mistake letting her stay. If she fixes this, that conversation ends. If she doesn't, we lose 8 months of crops and face starvation before the next supply ship. Which matters more, your pride or our survival?" Chen's jaw worked, but she stepped aside. Vela approached the console with shaking hands, aware of every hostile eye on her. The screens showed cascading failures in the filtration membrane network, pressure differentials spiraling into chaos, but underneath the human interface modifications she recognized the core architecture. It was based on the Voron purification standard, a design she'd personally refined during her doctoral research. She began typing, her fingers moving faster as muscle memory took over. The engineers watched in silence as she bypassed 3 safety protocols, rerouted flow through backup channels, and isolated the source of the failure, a microfracture in the primary membrane that had been slowly degrading for months. Within 20 minutes, she'd stabilized the system. Within an hour, she'd implemented a permanent fix using the colony's spare parts. When the green lights finally blazed across the board, Chen stared at the console like it had performed a miracle. That's impossible. How did you... The fracture pattern matches thermal stress from improper calibration, Vela said quietly. Your maintenance schedule was running the system too hot. I've adjusted the parameters. It should last another decade now. Catherine placed a hand on Vela's shoulder, the gesture startling her. Come to my office tomorrow morning. We need to talk about your employment. That night, Vela told Mira and Kyle what had happened while they ate dinner in their small apartment. Kyle's eyes went wide. Does that mean we can stay? Maybe, Vela said carefully, not wanting to promise what she couldn't guarantee. We'll see. But the next morning, Catherine offered her a position as assistant environmental engineer, with triple the pay and access to the colony's research facilities. We need your expertise, Catherine said simply, if you're willing to share it. Vela accepted, her voice thick with emotion. For the first time since her world had burned, she felt like she might be more than just a refugee waiting to die. The promotion brought new challenges. Half the colony celebrated having an expert to maintain their critical systems. The other half saw it as a betrayal, putting a former enemy in a position of power. Aaron Blake led the opposition, a lean, hard-eyed man who'd lost his son in the final assault on the Thrixian homeworld. He confronted Catherine in the central square 3 days after Vela's promotion, with a crowd gathering to watch. You're letting that alien touch our water, our air, our food, Blake's voice rang out. My boy died fighting her kind, and you're paying her to live in comfort while we remember our dead. Catherine stood her ground. Your son died so we could have peace, Aaron, not so we could become the monsters we were fighting. Peace? Blake spat. There's no peace with them. They're waiting for us to lower our guard so they can finish what they started. Vela saved our crops, someone in the crowd called out. That's worth something. Today she saves crops, Blake shot back. Tomorrow she poisons the well and kills us all in our sleep. You're all fools if you trust her. The argument escalated until Catherine ordered everyone to disperse, but Vela heard the anger in their voices. That night she lay awake listening to footsteps outside her apartment, wondering if someone would decide to solve the problem with violence. But weeks passed, and slowly, grudgingly, the colony adjusted. Vela's work proved invaluable. She optimized their air recycling to reduce power consumption by 15%, redesigned the waste processing to produce higher-grade fertilizer, and even created a backup water system that could sustain the colony through a siege. Mira made her first human friend, a girl named Sophie whose mother worked in medical. Kale stopped having nightmares as frequently. Then the sabotage happened. Vela arrived at the agricultural dome one morning to find Hernandez waiting with security guards. His face was grave. Someone poisoned Section 7 last night. 40 rows of grain, completely destroyed. Vela's blood went cold. How? Chemical contamination, introduced directly into the irrigation system. Hernandez wouldn't meet her eyes. The access logs show your security code was used. That's impossible. I was home with the children. The timestamps don't lie, one of the guards said. He was young, nervous. You were logged in at 0200 hours. Someone stole my access, Vela said desperately. I didn't do this. But when Catherine arrived, her face was carefully neutral. We need to investigate properly. Until we know what happened, I'm suspending your access to all critical systems. The colony turned against her overnight. People who'd nodded to her in the halls now looked away. Parents pulled their children away from Mira at school, Someone spray-painted traitor on their apartment door in red paint. Kale cried himself to sleep, asking why people hated them again. Vela knew the truth. Someone had framed her, probably Blake or one of his supporters. But she had no proof, and in the court of public opinion, she'd already been convicted. She started packing their belongings, preparing to leave before Catherine was forced to exile them officially. "We're not leaving," Mira said when she saw the bags. The 12-year-old stood in the doorway with her arms crossed, looking far older than her years. "This is our home. They don't want us here, little one. I don't care what they want." Mira's voice shook but stayed firm. "You fixed their water. You saved their crops. If they're too stupid to see that, we'll prove it to them." "How?" Vela asked hopelessly. "I don't know, but we don't run anymore." Before Vela could respond, the emergency sirens began to wail. Not the colony alarm she'd heard during drills, but the deep, bone-shaking tone that meant incoming ships. She grabbed both children and ran outside, where people were streaming toward the shelters. "Catherine's voice boomed over the speakers. "All civilians to emergency bunkers. This is not a drill. Hostile vessels approaching. Military personnel report to defensive positions." Vila's stomach dropped. Through the gaps between buildings, she could see them in the sky. 3 Thrixian warships descending through the atmosphere, their hulls marked with the crimson insignia of the Purification Fleet. The hardliners who'd refused to accept the war's end, who'd vowed to execute any Thrixian who collaborated with humans. They'd come for her. She shoved Mira and Kale toward the nearest bunker. "Go, hide. Don't come out until it's safe." "What about you?" Mira grabbed her arm. "They want me, not you. If I surrender, maybe they'll leave the colony alone." "No!" Kale screamed. "Don't leave us!" Catherine appeared, running against the tide of fleeing civilians. "Get those children to safety." "Vela, I need you in the command center now. I'm the reason they're here, I know. That's why I need you. Move." In the command center, chaos reigned. The colony's defenses were minimal. 2 railgun emplacements and a handful of missile batteries designed to shoot down asteroids, not military-grade warships. The defense coordinator, a former Navy officer named Cole, was barking orders to his tiny force while watching the Thrixian ships take up positions in high orbit. "They're hailing us," the communications officer said. Catherine nodded. "Put them through." The screen flickered, showing a Thrixian commander in full battle armor. His face was scarred, his eyes cold. "Human settlement. We have no quarrel with you. Surrender the traitor Vela of House Myreth and we will depart peacefully." "This colony doesn't surrender its people," Catherine said flatly. "Then you will die defending a criminal who helped our enemies while our worlds burned. You have 1 hour to comply." The transmission cut. Cole turned to Catherine, his face grim. "We can't fight 3 warships. We'll last maybe 10 minutes. How many people can we evacuate in an hour?" Catherine asked. "Not enough. The transport ships are on the other side of the planet. We'd need 3 hours minimum to get everyone out." Vela stepped forward, her mind racing. "Let me see their ship configurations." Cole pulled up sensor data. Vela studied the readings, her heart pounding. The Purification Fleet used older designs, ships that had been decommissioned by the main Thrixian Navy decades ago. She recognized the shield matrix, a Carvon Mark VII system, with a critical vulnerability she'd discovered during her postdoctoral research. "Their shields have a harmonic weakness," she said rapidly. "If you hit them with overlapping electromagnetic pulses at specific frequencies, the resonance cascade will cause a catastrophic failure." Cole frowned. "We don't have EMP weapons. But you have mining equipment," Vila said. "The plasma bore you use to cut through asteroid rock. It generates massive electromagnetic interference. If we modify 3 of them and time the pulses correctly, we can drop their shields long enough for your railguns to penetrate." "That's insane," Cole said. "The bores are designed for precision work, not combat. The power requirements alone will drain your reserves completely." Vela finished. "You'll have 1 shot, but it will work." Catherine looked at her for a long moment. "You're sure?" "I designed the countermeasures for this exact vulnerability." "I'm sure. Then let's get to work." They had 40 minutes. Vela worked alongside the colony's engineers, ripping apart 3 industrial mining bores and rewiring them into makeshift weapons, while Cole positioned them at strategic points around the settlement. Blake appeared halfway through, his face twisted with rage. "You're trusting her?" he shouted at Catherine. "She's probably signaling her friends right now." "Then help us or get out of the way," Catherine snapped. "We're out of time for your vendetta." Blake stared at Vela, his hands clenching into fists. Then his daughter, Sophie, ran up to him, crying. "Daddy, Mira's trapped in the bunker. The door mechanism failed and she won't leave Kale." Something changed in Blake's face. He looked at Vela, then at the makeshift weapons, then back at his daughter. "Show me what to do," he said quietly. With Blake's help, they finished with 2 minutes to spare. Vela ran the calculations one final time, then programmed the firing sequence into the colony's defense grid. The Thrixian ships were descending, moving into attack formation. "Targets locked," Cole reported. "Firing on your mark." Vela's hand hovered over the activation switch. If she was wrong, the colony would die. 3,000 people, including Mira and Kael, would be vaporized because she'd convinced them to trust her theory. "Do it," Catherine said beside her. Vela pressed the switch. The 3 mining bores fired simultaneously, their electromagnetic pulses invisible but devastating. In orbit, the Thrixian shields flickered, the harmonic resonance building exactly as Vela had predicted. For 3 seconds, the warships were vulnerable. Cole didn't hesitate. Both railguns fired, magnetic acceleration hurling tungsten penetrators at relativistic speeds. The first ship's reactor went critical immediately, exploding in a brilliant flash. The second took a hit to its engine core and began spiraling toward the planet, trailing fire. The third managed to restore shields, but it was already retreating, limping into high orbit and then jumping to hyperspace. Silence filled the command center. Then someone cheered, and suddenly everyone was shouting, crying, embracing. They'd survived. Vela collapsed into a chair, her whole body shaking. Catherine crouched beside her. "You saved us." "I brought them here," Vela whispered. "And then you stopped them." Catherine gripped her shoulder. "That's what matters." Outside, Blake found Vela as she walked back to check on the children. He stood in her path, and she braced for more accusations. But instead, he extended his hand. "My daughter told me what you did," he said roughly. "How you stayed to help instead of running. How you risked everything even though we treated you like dirt." His voice cracked. "I was wrong about you. I'm sorry." Vela took his hand carefully. "Your son's death was still real. Your grief is still valid. Maybe, but hate won't bring him back." Blake looked toward the bunkers where children were emerging, laughing and crying with relief. Building something better might honor him, though. The Colony Council met that evening. There was no debate, no argument. They voted unanimously to make Vela the Chief of Environmental Engineering with full citizenship rights. Catherine went further, filing official adoption papers to make Mira and Kale legal citizens of New Haven Colony, with all the protections that status carried. "No one will ever threaten them again," Catherine told Vela privately. "They're ours now. We protect our own." That night, Vela sat with both children in their apartment, holding them close. Mira was crying, but for the first time in months, they were tears of relief rather than fear. Kale had fallen asleep against Vela's side, his breathing steady and calm. "Are we really staying?" Mira whispered. "We're really staying," Vela promised. "This is home now." Through the window, she could see the colony lights spreading across the valley, thousands of points of illumination pushing back the darkness. Tomorrow she would start designing better defenses, training new engineers, building the systems that would protect these people who'd given her everything. Tomorrow she would help the children plant seeds in the agricultural dome, showing them how to nurture life from barren soil. But tonight, she simply held them and let herself believe in the possibility of peace. The war had taken everything from her. But Catherine Grant, a human who'd lost just as much, had given her something more valuable than revenge or justice. She'd given Vela a reason to hope, and in doing so had changed not just the fate of 2 alien children, but the future of an entire world learning to heal. The stars shone through the window, indifferent and eternal. But here, In this small room, on a human colony at the edge of known space, 3 survivors found what they'd been searching for all along. Not safety, not comfort, but belonging. And that made all the difference.